In this video, I will show you how to use the if function inside Google Sheets. So before we get into our example, I want you to understand the logic behind the if function or the theory of the if function. So in order to understand that, you need to learn, first of all, what is a logic test or a logical test inside Google Sheets. A logical test is basically a test where you can have as a result either true or false. So in order to do a logical test inside Google Sheets, you can go to any cell in your screen, type equal, and then put the test. So let's test, for example, if 2 is bigger than 4. And as you can see here, Google Sheet is already predicting the answer for this test. The answer is obviously going to be false because 2 is not bigger than 4. So the result of this logical test, which is if 2 is superior than 4, is false. Now, let's do another logical test. This time, let's test if 2 is inferior than 4. And this time, as you can see, the result is going to be true because, yes, indeed, 2 is inferior or less than 4. So this is basically what is a logical test inside Google Sheets and how we can use it. Okay. So maybe you are wondering why I am talking about logical tests, and in this video I said that I'm going to explain to you how the if function works. Well, the if function will run a logical test, and if the logical test result is true, then the if function will do something, and if it's false, then it will do another thing. This is in fact how the if function is made. So let's see how we can use the if function inside Google Sheets. So to do that, you can click on any cell, press equal. We always use the equal sign before using any function. So if I don't use the equal sign and then press if, nothing will happen, right? But if I use the equal sign and then press if, then Google Sheet will understand that I want to use the if function. Okay, so when we input if, we can see the list of the different functions that contains the word if. The function that we will be using is going to be the function if. Okay, so it's going to be the first one. We can select the first one, and when you click on this question mark, you can have more information about this function. So as you can see, the if function will return one value if the logical expression is true, and another value if the logical expression or the logical test is false. So the syntax of the if function is really easy, and I will explain it to you right now. So the if function will accept three different parameters. The first parameter is going to be the logical expression or the logical test. It can be a simple test, like testing, for example, if 2 is inferior or superior than 4. And this is why I wanted to start the video by talking about the logical tests or the logical expressions, because inside the if function, we will put a logical test. And again, depending on the result of that test, we will do something. So let's say, for example, that we want to test if 2 is superior than 4. So let's say, for example, that the test is going to be 2 superior than 4. And then we put a comma. The comma inside any function means that we have finished inputting the first parameter, and now we want to include or add the second parameter. Okay? So in this function, we have three parameters. That means that we will separate each parameter and another with a comma. So we'll be using two commas. Okay, so this is the first parameter. which is the logical expression, and the logical expression is if 2 is superior than 4. So when you press on comma, this means that now we need to add the value if the logical expression is true. So if 2 is superior than 4, what we want to display, for example, a text saying that 2 is superior than 4. Now, we add a comma to add the value or the output if the logical expression is false. And in this case, we want to print, for example, 2 is inferior than 4. Okay, so again, let's check the expression or the example that we have used right now. So first of all, we have the logical expression, which is if 2 is superior than 4. Then we are saying that if 2 is superior than 4, to display 2 is superior than 4. Or if the 2 is not superior than 4, I want you to display 2 is inferior than 4. So when we press on enter, it will show us the second value. 2 is inferior than 4, which is logical because, as you can see here in the formula, the result of the logical expression is false. So Google Sheet will display the second value. Perfect. Now that we understood how the if function works, or the syntax of the if function, let's see how we can use this amazing function inside a real life example. So in the screen, I have a sales data set. As you can see, we have a list of sales order, person, product, the value of the sale, the city, etc. Let's say, for example, that we want to identify all the sales with value superior, for example, than $200, okay? So in order to do that, let's first of all print this expression here, or this question here. Is the total value superior than $200? Okay, perfect. Okay, now if we want to test if the total value, which is this value, is superior or not than $200, we will obviously use the if function to do that. So in order to do it, we go here to the first row, type equal, because we are going to use the if function, type if, select the first function, and now we need to put our logical expression or our logical tests. The logical test is going to be if this value, which is the content of the cell G2, so if the cell G2, which is the total value, is superior than 200, so if this condition is true, I want you to display yes. And if the condition is false, I want you to display no. Okay? So here, as you can see, again, the logical expression is if G2 is superior than 200. If this is correct, if G2 is really superior than 200, I want you to display yes, which means that the total value is bigger than 200. If this is not the case, if the total value is not superior than 200, I want you to put no. So when we press on enter, we can see that Google Sheet is already suggesting to apply the same formula for the rest of the cells. All right, let's say no because I want to show you how you can do it. Okay, so as you can see here for the second row, Google Sheet or the if function is saying that yes, the total value is higher or bigger than 200, which is obvious because here we have 280. Okay, so let's say, for example, that we want to do the test for all the cells of our table. So rather than doing it for all the cell or the rows one by one, what we can do is select the first row, the first cell over here, go to the bottom right, and then click, hold your mouse, and drag to the bottom. And here you can see that the same formula is applied for all the cells, for all the rows. And Google Sheets is smart enough to adapt the formula to the specific row. For example, here, as you can see, we are testing if the G2 is superior than 200 because this is the second row. Now for the third row, rather than testing with G2, we are now testing with G3. And as you can imagine, this is the case for the other rows. So here we have G4, G4, G5, etc. So in this video, I showed you how we can use the if function inside Google Sheets. I also explained to you the logic behind the if function, and hopefully now you are capable of using this function inside your projects.